This is my ironing board area, and one of the things I almost all the time use when I'm sewing or quilting or doing anything down here in my sewing room is my ironing board. And there's a couple things that I really like about this ironing board. Number one, it's a nice, sturdy ironing board. Some ironing boards that you get that are pretty inexpensive are pretty wobbly and flimsy, and they really don't hold up as well and give you the support you need when you're pressing things. So this is very sturdy to hold things. The other thing I like about this ironing board is that it's wider than the average ironing board that you purchase. So I can get more things or press more fabric at a time because of the wide width. The other thing I like about this ironing board is the length. It is longer than an average size ironing board. And what I have on now actually is the end of the ironing board that just makes a complete rectangle. The end of this ironing board I can replace, so I have a narrow end. When you're pressing garments, that's really, really helpful to have that narrow end, and sometimes with projects too. The other option I have is to slide on an extra piece, which is what I have on now, and it makes a rectangle ironing board. So I have the whole length of my ironing board, this full width, and can press large pieces of fabric, like backings or borders. It's really, really handy to do. The other thing is, my iron does not actually sit on my ironing board. It can. There's a Teflon plate here, actually Teflon cloth, that's at the end of the ironing board that I can set my iron down on. But it also has an iron stand. So I can put my iron over here, and I'm not using up any of the space on my ironing board. I have the whole space to press whatever I'm doing. So I love using this ironing board, and of course my iron is sitting there in the end. The other thing that I have near my ironing board is my little message board, and this is mainly just for decoration. I did a class with chalkboard cloth, and we made message boards, and so of course I had to do one for my sewing room. This is chalk cloth, and you can actually write on it with chalk, and that's what's in this little chalk holder right here. And of course I had to embellish it with embroidery. And the theme of my sewing room is green. And I always liked this dogwood print fabric, and so everything I made for my sewing room, and continue to make, is in a green cone of cotton and then this green print. So I've just carried out that same theme. The other thing that I have above my ironing board is a bulletin board, and I like to have this up here for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I can easily pin a note or something that I want to remember but don't have time to look up or inquire about right at the moment. So I can pin up that note and I can have it there for later. That's one reason. The other thing I like about my bulletin board, above my ironing board, is I have a pin cushion up here. And I actually store all of my handwork needles in here. I have a few straight pins also, but my needles are always here. Threads just kind of dangle down, but they're not in my way. And my needles are always there when I need to do a quick handwork project. The thing I love most about having a bulletin board above my ironing board is these little tools at the bottom. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see them a little better. But what I have at the bottom of this bulletin board is a small pair of scissors, a seam gauge, a point turner, and then a larger pair of paper scissors. And these are the most helpful things you can have by your ironing board. If I'm pressing something, I have scissors where I can clip a little loose thread. I have something that I can measure with. If I have my hands full and I can't move to where my seam gauge is by my sewing machine, I have it right here. It's hanging up. I can take it off, measure what I need to, put it back on. It's very, very handy. Point turner. A lot of times you use your point turner when you're pressing something, pressing out corners. My point turner is right there. And then a pair of paper scissors just for those paper projects that I come across that I don't want to use a good pair of scissors on. So if anything, the best thing I like about having a bulletin board above my ironing board is that I have these little tools that I can keep right next to my ironing board when I'm pressing things, and they're very handy. The other thing that I keep on my ironing board, and this unfortunately I can't hang up. If I could figure out a way that I could, I would develop it. But is a grab-it pin cushion. I have pin cushions all over my sewing room. I use them a lot, and I want them handy wherever I'm working. And so I often use pins when I'm pressing things, need to hold something down, and sometimes I will have my project situated on my ironing board, and I don't want to let go of what I'm doing and go find my pin cushion. So I always keep a magnetic pin cushion on the end of my ironing board, and I have pins available whenever I need them when I'm pressing. The other thing I keep next to my ironing board is my bookcase, and I'm going to open this up and show you what I have inside, because there's some really handy things you can keep on a shelf next to your ironing board. The first thing that I have up here at the top is a couple baskets. I'm going to pull these baskets out for you so you can see. And the first thing I have in here is freezer paper. Of course, you can use freezer paper when you're quilting for templates and other things. You usually cut them out and you use your iron to fuse them on. So that sits on a shelf by my ironing board. The other thing I have is two baskets here, and these baskets are filled with scraps of fusible interfacing and scraps of Heat and Bond, Wonder Under, Stitch Witchery. Of course, you use those frequently by your ironing board, but they're easy to get to. Whenever I'm cutting something out of interfacing or Wonder Under, I always keep the scraps and throw them into one of these two baskets. That way, if I need to mend something and need a little piece of interfacing, I can cut just a little piece off of this and I have it. It's the same with Wonder Under. If I need a little piece to fuse a placemat shut that I made and I don't want to hand tack it by hand, I can just put a little piece of Wonder Under or Stitch Witchery in there and fuse it shut, and it's done. So those little pieces really come in handy, and that will save you from cutting off of a bigger piece of interfacing or cutting off of a bigger piece of Wonder Under. So these pieces, these baskets, are handy, ready to use next to my ironing board. Sometimes those baskets do get overflowing, so if that happens, I do usually end up having to throw some away. But the scraps are there, and they're handy for when I need them. Put those pieces back on top. The next thing that I have is a box here on this shelf, and I have some things inside. I have iron-on cleaner, iron-off cleaner. I also have some glue and other things that I use for gluing on things in this little basket. I have pressing mitt. I have little scraps of fabric that I use by my ironing board. I have a scrap of fabric here that I use to clean my iron with. Little things like that that are come in handy to use, and it's nice to have them on a shelf. Other thing I have in here is my applique pressing sheet. It's right by my iron. I have it rolled up. It's on the shelf for whenever I need it. It's right there. The other thing that I have over here next to my iron is some cleaners. I have a spray bottle of water. Gotta have that. Starch, if I need starch. I have some hand lotion. I have Static Guard. I have stuff for printing off pictures, bottles of that type of thing. I keep my 505 spray adhesive in here also, and I can carry that wherever I need it to. But this is its permanent home for the moment. So I keep all my kind of bottles in there. 90% alcohol for cleaning off, 505 spray adhesive if I need to. Bottles, different levels of starch, different consistencies of starch. Some are heavier starch, some are a lighter starch. So I keep all that there. It's right there. I know where it is, and it's by my ironing board where I use it the most.